Welcome to Free Marketing Fridays. 20 minutes to give you actionable advice that you can start using today. Because we all need to work smarter, not harder. And this 20 minutes is designed to help you do just that. There's no fluff, there's no hustle bro advice. I'm not going to pitch you on buying a course or paid community. I'm just giving you advice that you can think about and hopefully use today. So today we are talking about attribution data. That's the data that's on the surface that tells you, or it's supposed to tell you, how valuable a channel or a program or a campaign is and the revenue that it contributes to the business. But after years of going back and forth and arguing with different teammates about the power of Google Ads over brand efforts and campaigns, I'm here to tell you that this data is most likely lying to you. And for the most part, we are all complicit in pushing that lie forward. And the lie is that we think that there's just a push button, get easy solution to figuring out how valuable these programs and content and campaigns are at a really super granular level, and how much they contribute to creating deals and closing sales, right? And because we're all looking for that easy solution, we pretend that these neat spreadsheets and these dashboards with attribution data reflects reality. Because sometimes it's just too hard or the lift is too great to argue and to continue arguing. And it makes leadership feel confident about their marketing investment when they have something to point to that says, hey, ROI, right? We are setting ourselves up for failure and it's making everybody miserable in the process. So today I'm going to show you how to stop lying to ourselves about attribution and track what actually influences your customers. For the next 20 minutes, we are going to talk a little bit about why we keep agreeing to use this magical spreadsheet or dashboard for forecasting when we all know it's broken, as well as the impossible timing expectations that get assigned to anything new that we try and that basically just ignore how customers buy. And then we'll walk through the reality that every deal involves multiple channels working together, but then your attribution data usually gives all the credit to the last one. That seems really unfair. And then I will show you how to build a measurement system that tells the real story of what influences customers and gives you something else to point to when the fight for a shrinking budget pops up and then disrupts the team dynamic. Because it's budget season, we are all kind of vying for as much of that share of the bigger pie as possible. And then we have to justify why we deserve that in the first place. So I'll give you a measurement tool to actually show how to justify that ask. Let's talk about the attribution question that automatically sparks a spicy argument. First touch, last touch, multi-touch. We all know that attribution is broken. And the fact that no one can measure it in the same way with any level of confidence just points to the fact that it is broken. We just pretend like it works because we need to move on with whatever it is that we have on our task list that day. And then leaning into that report from GA4 or Adobe is so much easier than just getting into another circular argument that no one ever wins. None of us actually believe in those tiny little spreadsheet rows of siloed channels and perfect dollar in, dollar out calculations. But we keep agreeing to it as a standard measurement because when we're under pressure, we want to make that CFO feel confident about marketing spend and justify the budget that we asked for and worked so hard to claw together. And it's crushing our teams and our morale, especially when you have a hard to measure initiative or program that has high engagement and recall, but is totally missing from that attribution report. We're literally setting ourselves up to fail. That is overall, in a nutshell, the lie. But then there is also something else, the timing trap. Leadership wants to know that campaign or that program, if it's working and how well it's working, usually within 2 weeks of it launching, even though it may have been designed to be a longer term play. And if your buying cycles are 3 or 6 or even 9 months long, there's going to be very little to report on in that 2 weeks. And then when you factor in seasonality, which has been completely wild and totally unpredictable in the last couple of years, and then noisy channels that aren't getting any quieter and changes in the buying committee and so many other little factors, it becomes really impossible to give those initial results after just a small span of time. We are measuring fast when customers move slow. There's a complete misalignment on expectations versus reality. And no matter how many times you explain it and try to justify why you're not seeing sales immediately after launching that thing, it never feels like your explanation is good enough. Here's the reality of how this affects our teams and our daily work. So leadership feels like they supported this effort or this campaign, and they should be able to push an easy button and get results. Like we wish that, truly. We wish there was literally an easy button we could smash and automatically get like incredible insights. Here's what really happens. Every single deal involves multiple channels working perfectly together. Someone hears about you on a podcast, researches you on a website, sees a social proof or a post on LinkedIn. They download some content, they talk to sales, they get a demo, they compare the different options together, right? There's a lot that goes into this particular journey for any customer of any significant size. This whole journey and process are complex. There is no single touch point or straight line in a customer journey. You're literally looking at a bowl of spaghetti. Additionally, sales and marketing actions have to be totally aligned for everything to make sense and to fall into place. There's never a buyer journey that's been singularly influenced by one isolated touch point, unless you are selling gum at a checkout in a grocery store, but like we're not talking about that type of purchase or impulse purchases today. Your attribution system is most likely giving 100% credit to whichever channel happened to be last. Like this is the typical default setup for an attribution measurement system. So Dan, the sales guy, gets a big fat commission because he was the one who pushed the contract over the line, and all that other effort from all the other team members and the channel efforts and the initiatives and the content aren't given the recognition they deserve. And where this becomes a real problem is when Dan chimes up and says, this thing earlier in the journey doesn't work. We should absolutely shift the budget. And because he now has clout and a deal that he can point to, his voice gets veto power when it comes time to figuring out budgets and allocations. And in the spirit of fairness, I just pulled out sales as an example. You can replace Dan, that sales guy, for Google Ads or events or sales webinars, whatever that thing is that usually gets credit for the sale. This attribution system is broken and busted, and we can do something different and better that supports our customers and our teams. Because when everyone is working hard to make that magic happen, they deserve to be supported with budget to continue their good work and credit with leadership. We haven't met before. My name's Sunny Hunt. I'm the Chief Customer Nerd here at Hunt Interaction. We help companies grow customer bases in smarter and more efficient ways, starting with their most profitable customers, and then we reverse engineer them to help them get more customers that look just like them. My work typically lives at the intersection of customer research, strategic customer growth, and revenue acceleration. I work for all these companies and a whole bunch more across 15 different industries. I've been around for a minute. So here's what's not going to fix this attribution issue. These feel like they would be solutions, but they're really not, especially when you're pressed for time and resources. You can't pull better reports from GA4. Yes, you can massage the data and you can make filters and that data collection process, and you can refine that, but ultimately GA4 and whatever reports, even from Adobe, are not going to fix this attribution issue. Another Band-Aid fix is on the other side of fixing this solution spectrum, and that's creating a massive detailed customer journey map with every possible touch point. And honestly, I used to do this. I used to create these big, giant Rosetta Stone journey maps that looked really impressive, took a ton of time and energy to create, but they were big and complicated, and ultimately teams just ignored them. So it was a lot of wasted effort. So the solution to measuring attribution is going to break your analytics and your BI team's brains a little bit, but I'm going to ask you to stick with me. You could try and attribute every single Google ad and individual point of every single customer journey to revenue contribution. And we have amazing tools and really smart people on our teams to do that. And even if it's possible, it's probably not practical, especially when you're trying to measure program or campaign impact or contribution. I prefer to measure awareness instead. And before you tune out and think, oh my God, we're replacing data for fuzzy feelings, just stick with me for just a minute. Instead of super detailed attribution reports and puzzles, I use a customer awareness map. It's based off of an awareness continuum that was created by this direct response copywriter named Gene Schwartz 50 years ago. There are 6 different awareness stages that roughly reflect the customer journey. You have customers who are completely unaware that they have a problem to begin with. Then you have customers who are aware that they do have a problem. Customers who are aware that there is a problem that they have and there might be a solution that can help them figure it out. They know there's a solution out there. Then you have customers who know that there's a solution and they're actively searching for the products to help them get that done. Then when they find those products, they're like, great, I have this handful of products. I have to figure out which one is the right one for me. And then once they winnow down that selection, they are ready to close the deal or say yes to one or of those solutions. They're just in the process of kind of finalizing that decision. So this is kind of the spectrum of an awareness map. Each stage requires different types of messaging, different encouragement tactics that move interested people closer to that point of sale. And what that messaging looks like and the different tactics and channels that are used will be different based off of your product and your service. But the channels and programs and campaigns that are overlooked by attribution measurement are contained in this awareness map. They are not getting the love, and I have a solution to help them get that love. So for each stage, you map for each stage, like unaware, problem aware, solution aware, all the way down, you map prospect intent. What are they looking? Why are they there? What their goals are? What are they hoping to get? The key messages that resonate with them at that stage, the different types of content that work to help move or encourage them to move to the next phase, the channels where they spend time, not the channels where you have expertise, but the channels where they spend time. And most importantly, the KPIs or the metrics that measure the power of that stage over time. You can drill this approach down to like individual campaigns, or you can keep it higher level and just look at the overall phase bucket, which is the approach I tend to take. But basically, you're measuring whether each awareness stage is working by moving people to the next stage and identifying where those gaps are that you could go back and fill. This is kind of an anonymized version of a customer awareness map that I created for a client. It has information from several different clients that kind of been Frankenstein together. So on the replay, if you like zoom in and look at it, it might not make sense, but essentially it is a cheat sheet that has more accessible information and resources, as well as the specific KPIs or metrics to measure for that stage. A map like this, which is basically like a grid, is so much easier to process and update than that gigantic customer journey map. And every single team can use it. Your direct response team, your marketing team, your sales team, customer success, like they can all access this and use this in order to make their lives a lot easier. And one thing that I rarely advise clients to do is to focus on that unaware stage that's over there on the left-hand side. That's why this column is generally blank. The level of effort to get somebody who is completely unaware that they have a problem to recognize that they do have a problem, doing that takes a lot of effort and a lot of lift. And then there are usually a lot more accessible and easier to grab opportunities that are closer to that point of sale, instead of trying to spend all your time and effort convincing someone they actually have a problem. So let me zoom in a little bit on a particular stage so that you can kind of break down this chart a little bit better. This is how all of this works in practice. Let me take the problem aware stage. So when a prospect understands that they have a problem, they're like, I've got this problem. I need to solve it. I need help with this issue, or I know that I have a problem and I know what that problem is. And the goal with people at this particular stage is to help them focus on the problem and introduce a solution. Like, you are not the problem. There is a problem here, and there is something out there that can help you solve this problem. And then the key messages that resonate include things along the lines of, you're not alone. This is a solvable problem for you. And content to support people at this particular stage might include things like blog posts, online assessments, other diagnostic tools. Like, your mileage may vary depending on what you're trying to sell, and your product, your solution, and your customers, and what their preference is. But generally, that content is designed to help them validate that, yeah, they do have a problem. There is a solution that connects to that goal that they're trying to solve. Channels might include things like website, social, SEO, AI, SEO, etc. These are discoverable channels that your prospects use and engage with regularly. So it's not a big shift or a big ask to take to have them consume content or a campaign or expose them to different ways to that information and to those messages. And as far as KPIs go, these are stage specific related to content consumption. So that would be like a completed assessment, engagement with that, email signups, things like that. Anything that indicates that they are engaging with that messaging in those channels and ready to move on to the next phase. And just a quick reminder about the difference between like metrics and KPIs. Metrics are just data points that you can count. That's what you'd pull down from GA4. Website traffic, email opens, content downloads, demo requests, those things. It's more of like a 1-0 count. And KPIs are more indicators that tell you if you're actually achieving your goals. They tend to be a little bit fuzzier and kind of combine metrics to kind of make more of an assessment instead of just reporting specifically on the facts. But most teams mistake metrics for success. So they might say something like, our blog got 1,000 views this month. It's like, okay, cool. But did those views move anyone closer to buying? You don't know because page views is a metric, not a KPI, and it doesn't help you understand the progress a prospect makes in their journey or the effectiveness of your efforts to get them to that next stage. Once you know what your customers want, the messages that resonate, the channels where they spend time, because you've already asked your existing high-value customers and quantified those responses, right? Yeah. Your content strategy becomes crystal clear when you map that to the individual awareness stages. And then you can develop campaigns and other programs within those larger phased buckets. But the closer you get to the point of sale, the more specific and targeted and higher urgency your content can get. Just like when you meet somebody that you're going to eventually marry, you don't immediately meet somebody and then hop to the altar unless you go to Vegas, right? But typically that's not how relationships work. You meet, you introduce yourself, you get a coffee date, you go to lunch, you date for a while. Yeah, they ask you agree to commit to each other, and then you get married, right? There is a logical phase to that approach. You automatically don't just jump to married, usually. But what kind of content related to this context, what kind of content are we talking about for these different phases that helps get you to that yes answer? Problem-aware content gets is more easily discoverable content like blog posts and online quizzes that help people diagnose their situation. You're not being too obnoxious with that sale language too fast. Solution-aware content gets white papers, educational guides, more about approaches. Product-aware gets more case studies and comparisons that name individual products. That's where naming and brand recognition starts coming in. And most aware gets decision-making guides that support influencers in that buying committee and makes those influencers look like heroes when they take all that information back to their teams to talk about which solution is best for them. And most aware with high intent gets more personalized demos and sales conversations. This is where your sales team comes in. They have to prime the sale before they can actually close it. Each piece of content has a job tied to an awareness stage, not a conversion goal. Taking that awareness map and zooming in on those KPIs, when you start measuring these things over time, it's not enough just to list out the KPIs. You also need to follow them up by answering the question, so what? You have to do the work to translate the changes over time into recommendations or insights that are shareable with different teams and your leadership team. So for instance, in this example, a product aware stage, a 15 to 50% decrease in case study engagement. Yikes, that's not good. So when you ask, so what? This signals that there might be a potential gap in product level content. You need to increase that brand awareness or that product level awareness. So what can you do? Where are your gaps that you need to fill? Your most aware stage, if it was 30% increase in buying guide downloads, it's okay, cool. That signals strong interest in decision-making content. People are processing it. They're ready to move on to the next stage. What can you do to encourage that? Most aware with high intent. If you see a 30% increase in booked demos, that signals bottom of the funnel health. Your pipeline is probably pretty healthy. That's great. What can you do in order to incentivize more of those sales conversations or make those sales conversations more valuable to your customers? That's where your win-loss interviews would come in. When you identify what those KPIs are for each stage and then you measure them over time, you get to do a couple things. First thing, when Dan in sales says, we shouldn't be doing that webinar anymore, and you know that it was an amazing assist and had direct influence on sales, but you don't have any data to back that up in the funnel, and then you lose that battle for budget and then lose that webinar, you'll be able to see the downstream effect of losing out on that webinar. And then you have the data to justify bringing it back. You have a tool to make adjustments in your growth levers and find unexpected efficiencies in this ecosystem, not just at the campaign level. So once you start testing and pulling levers by adding in new initiatives, channel experiments, messaging shifts, you're going to be able to see the impact that has on your overall timeline. You can also identify which awareness stages are underperforming or have gaps that you can fill. And you can allocate budget to strengthen weak stages and see the results of your work. This is a really powerful tool when you take the time to cobble it together. Just know that if you or I ever get into a disagreement about attribution, especially when it comes to budget allocation, I'm going to be doubling down on measuring awareness and ecosystem health over channel attribution every single day and twice on Tuesdays. That's where my soapbox position stands. If you or your leadership team are adamant about sticking with the existing attribution model, this is how you make the argument for trying something different. Attribution assigns credit to individual touchpoints. Awareness stage measurement shows you ecosystem health. With awareness stage measurement, you can optimize weak awareness stages instead of chasing last click credit and fighting over revenue contribution. And when you measure awareness stage health, budget decisions are based on actual customer progression through stages in your funnel and not dashboard metrics theater. And here's the bonus. Once you get buy-in to focus on measuring awareness stages instead of just attribution, teams reduce their fighting and their friction over conversion credit and start aligning around helping customers progress through their journey. So how do you do this for your own team? First of all, you need decision-making criteria from your customers. You need those customer insights as well as data from your analytics tools. You need to map your current content, campaign, and other initiatives into awareness stages and identify where you have gaps or where you may be overcompensating. And then create KPIs that measure stage performance, not individual campaign ROI. You might get some pushback on this. Be prepared to compromise a little bit, especially if you have a spicy analytics or BI team. But then again, they may surprise you and may want to help you out. It might be a great sanity check. And then present awareness stage level performance alongside your traditional attribution reports and start having conversations about how they differ and what you could do better. Show teams and leaders how the ecosystem is performing and then make recommendations on where your budget and your effort should go to support prospects through their journey to becoming customers. Here's the thing to keep in mind when you're talking about attribution and how that system is just broken. With attribution, there are too many unaccounted for variables, and the data that come out of those reports and then the decisions that are made off this incomplete data can seriously harm your business and accidentally cut the legs out from underneath you. And you won't even know it until it's too late. And then trying to figure out what you did to screw everything up upstream becomes a real challenge and nearly impossible. Instead of focusing on the individual campaigns and channel efforts and trying to optimize those, zoom out just a little bit and focus on the stages of awareness, assigning KPIs to the efforts in those stages, and then measuring those changes over time. You're going to set yourself up for better overall success and create a platform for experimentation so you can take advantage of opportunities and minimize the risk that comes with incomplete attribution data. And also minimize the risk of overvaluing the opinions of that one know-it-all sales guy who somehow got beef with somebody on the marketing team, who everyone still listens to for some godforsaken reason and only because he's got last touch clout from a broken attribution system. We can do better. We will do better. So in a nutshell, this is my beef with attribution and how I recommend adjusting your measurement approach to fix it. And this is an approach that I use with my own clients. So this is all the time that we have today for Free Marketing Fridays. Thanks for spending time with me. I will see you next Friday.